Are you recording?
Yes, I'm scared. It's no different. Hi, everybody. It's Todd Conklin, and this is the Pre-Accident Investigation Podcast. Thanks for being here. Yeehaw! Well, this is a big one. I think you're going to enjoy this one. If my memory serves me correctly, this is episode 50 of the Pre-Accident Podcast. This is interview 50. Now, we've done a whole bunch of episodes, but I don't count the little safety moments as real episodes. I mean, they're just safety moments. This is the podcast for sure. And here we are, my friends, nigh on close to December, and right now probably nearly in the midst of the Thanksgiving hoo-ha. And that's my favorite holiday. I'll straight up say it. I like Thanksgiving for a bunch of reasons. One is it's a food holiday, and I'm always into food holidays. You know that about me. The other reason is that I like the holiday because it's not encumbered with a lot of other things, and it's about sort of being thankful. And remember, this is my year of gratitude, and I've tried to exercise gratitude as much as possible. I wouldn't say I was a huge success this year on this theme. I may actually keep it for a second year and try to focus on it more. But Thanksgiving is an opportunity, at least in the United States, to simply be thankful for what we have. And I think that kind of stock check makes a huge difference. In fact, I think one of our issues in the safety world, certainly in Safety Differently, is that we probably don't spend enough time actually celebrating the successes we have, because we're always super busy and on to the next thing. But it's time to do so, and that's what this month's about. The podcast today is a great one. You're going to really like it. It's a repeat occurrence only. This is a live interview. This is Tania Palmer and Megan Curry from Contact Energy in New Zealand. And I was over there, spent some time with them this year. What a great company, and what a brave company, and what a courageous company, and what they're doing with safety and really performance reliability is quite remarkable. It's certainly worth watching. If you get a chance to talk to these people, I would encourage you to talk to them, because the story they tell is really the story of how the journey happened. And they've kept a pretty good diary, both actually and mentally, on how this change happened, and how they created an opportunity to facilitate new thinking into an old school, pretty strongly engineering-based organization, and how they were able to really coach and work with their senior leaderships all the way at the top of the organization to have direct impact with everybody within the organization. It was a fun trip, too. I had a great time. I met 1 million people, which is great fun. Gave a lot of presentations, walked around on geothermal generators, walked around in hydro generators, went to lots of traditional generation stations, and watched them make lots of LP gas. And that was a cool thing to do. Thank you so much for that opportunity, Contact. It was great fun. But more importantly, thanks for doing the podcast, because I think the people that listen to this will learn much from your journey, and that's the entire reason we do these podcasts. So now, without any further ado, sitting in a town called Queenstown, New Zealand, in a little hotel room, here are the three of us talking about Contact's journey into Safety Differently.
So most of your listeners will know the Hudson model.
Uh-huh.
So we were kind of... In your last podcast, I said kind of about 50 times. I counted it.
Did you listen?
Yeah, I did. And I thought, how often do I say kind of?
See, I don't think you should ever go back and listen.
Cringeworthy. Anyway.
That's what I think. That's my theory.
We were reactive calculative 18 months ago, would you say, Megan?
Yeah.
2 years ago. And to shift us and nudge us away from that and get up the scale more towards proactive. The key things we've focused on have been management reaction to events.
Right.
Saying that matters, it has huge impact. How do we change that? And relax the culture a bit so that people kind of, they believe that we want the best and we do want to improve, that we're not just out to kind of hammer them, which I think is where they felt before they'd get in trouble, and if something happened and they went wrong, that they'd get in trouble. And we focused on learning teams.
So let's go back to managers reacting to events. So was it a good thing to focus on?
Absolutely. I believe it was the most important thing we could have focused on, because it was the biggest thing impacting our culture.
How'd you do it?
We had sweaty palm conversations, didn't we, Megan? We went to people, because Megan and I know the senior leaders really well. And so we knew their intent was really well intended. You know, they had really noble intent. They didn't want people to be harmed. They wanted our safety performance to be really good. What they didn't understand, because nobody was telling them, was how their behaviour was being felt. That actually people were intimidated, people were worried, that it was all about trying to punish the...
Did you let them practice? Asking them to be different is probably not nearly as effective as it sounds. I mean, you must have done more than just ask them to be different.
So what we did was gave managers an example of when they did this is how the workers reacted.
Oh, wow.
And they got that. They went, oh, man, that's
quite
not what
specific.
I wanted.
Yeah. We also measured it, I think, with our HSC culture survey, and that was really telling, because the way that process worked was verbatim feedback was also in there, so managers could really connect how people were feeling and the results that came through in that survey with some live examples because of the verbatim feedback. And so again, that sort of reinforced, gosh, our intent is never for that to be felt like that, and we had no idea that that's how it was being received. And so, our sharp-end workers actually told us that through a survey as well. And then a year later, we've resurveyed, and people are saying we are feeling a change. We're feeling a change about how leaders react and respond to incidents. However, there's still a little bit of trepidation to go, well, is this an embedded change? How long will it last? What happens if something really crappy happens? So there's still a bit of a test to come, and people are telling us that. So that's where it's really important that for our leaders and for all of us, that we continue to stay in that space that we've developed over the last 18 months, because, the true test will be when something really crappy happens.
How long do you think it'll take to hardwire it into your leadership? I mean, just guessing.
That's the reality of culture change, and that's what we've talked to people about. This is going to take some time. You cannot change culture overnight, because, there's a lot of people in this organisation, there's a lot of leaders, and there's a lot of layers of leadership to go through to get them to change their behaviour. I think 3 years. We've been doing it for 18 months. I think another 18 months, and it will if we hold them there. But I had a really good conversation with one of our senior leaders in the operations business the other day about this. So I feel like in the last 18 months to 2 years, it's been Megan and I coming in, having the conversations. Now it's got to come from within the business. Otherwise, if you do it for too long, from us as advisors in the HSC, you kind of become like the messiahs.
Right. Or they ignore you, right?
Or they start ignoring you and go, wow, you've been banging on about this for 18 months and there's been a little bit of change, but not enough big change. So I'm hearing a bit of that around the traps. We've seen some small change and that's really good, but there's not enough big change. People are getting impatient, which is good, because people go, hey, we want this, we want some change, this is really good. They're really recognising it. But the small experiment, and I don't think by big change they mean stop small experiments. We need to keep those, but we probably need to do some bolder stuff.
Some like structural stuff? Like, what do you mean by bolder?
I think in some ways it's probably structural, and not just about people, but about, roles and responsibilities within like our safety rules and our permitting system. Is it, and the guys at sites have talked about this, is it one size fits all for every one of our sites? We've got very different sites. Some of them, you mentioned it the other day, they're too big to be small and too small to be big. Yeah. So how do you make your verification processes work really well on a site like that? And it doesn't have to be exactly the same as another site, which actually is large, which is more complex and lots more layers. So that's where I think we're at now.
What's the power of one size fits all? I mean, what do you think is seductive about that?
I think it's this big bang. I think it's this seduction that people think there's this one model, and if we just do this model and we do it like the book says, then all of our problems will go away.
Miracle. It's a miracle.
It's a miracle, but it's not that simple. Because you've got all this complexity of people and roles and the type of generation, and it's so different. You're right, seductive is a good word.
You've had really good support from the top though, right?
Awesome support from the top.
Has that made a difference?
Huge difference.
I got an email, I think today or yesterday, from a guy who said sometimes he thinks safety people saying we need the top to support, we need the top to act, is kind of an excuse for not doing better work as safety people. I thought that was really interesting. Because I can see where you could say we failed because the top didn't support. But in your case, the top's supporting you and seems pretty mature on it, right?
It was tough. We had to have some tough conversations with them, but they were open to it. And because their intent was pure and their intent was noble, and as soon as they knew the felt impact of their action wasn't hitting the mark, they were willing to change.
How are you measuring progress? Or how are you, measuring is the wrong word, how are you talking about progress with these guys? Other than time. Time is helpful, I think.
So Megan mentioned the cultural maturity survey. We've done that twice now. We did it 12 months apart. So we were reactive calculative. That showed us on the two dimensions that we were not great at were what the survey called was safety justice. Which was, as leaders, if something happens, are we fair, consistent, and reasonable? And on the leadership team, we thought we were great. We gave ourselves 4 out of 5, and the staff gave us about a 1.5 out of 5.
Was that horrifying to
It was
leaders?
awful.
I mean, were they just like, holy crap?
It was confronting. It was.
But it was a great conversation to have because we all went, you know what, no matter how badly we want to change our culture, we're not going to do it when that chasm is there, man. So we went out and said, what should we change? What should we keep? And what should we stop?
Do you see a business advantage to this culture shift? I mean, beyond safety?
Totally. So we had our leadership, we have what we call a hui, which is a Maori word for our sort of senior leaders, about 80 of us across the business get together. And when Megs and I really knew we'd had a breakthrough was heaps of people came up and said, you know how we talk about this generative safety culture, guys, it's actually not safety. It's actually, if you're there on safety, you'll be there on everything else. Right. It's got to be a good thing. So lots and lots of people are recognising that, which is fantastic.
Yeah, that is fantastic.
The second thing that we were not so good at that came through in our HSC culture maturity review was empowerment. So we weren't the workers were telling us they feel done to. They don't feel like they're involved in designing processes, procedures, systems that make it work, and they're the guys that have to use it. They're the guys that know what does work and what doesn't. So we've done a lot in that area as well. And in fact, one of our big safety programs that we're on at the moment around process safety and simplification is all based on the premise of it's not driven from a project team of experts saying, here is your new designed system and processes and this is what it'll look like. It's guys coming in to workshops to go, what's broken, what's crappy, how should it look for the future that's simple, effective, safe, enduring, has continuous improvement. And so we've been really quite deliberate in how we do continuous improvement. I think that's been a big thing, hasn't it, for the last 12 months, 18 months, a real change. So it's not driven from a corporate office, people sitting there who are the technical experts to say, in Nirvana, this is how you will do stuff, you know. It's actually the guys going, actually, we're going to design this, and this is what works, this is what doesn't, and this is, and that's really getting momentum now too.
How are you collecting that data for the enterprise? How do you collect what happens in one meeting so that it has impact?
The process safety stuff?
Yeah, for other...
The best thing about process safety, this project, is the absolute commitment of those senior managers in our operations business that the sharp end will drive this. They will tell us what's working, what's not. And they've been so verbal and open about it, and they've been really consistent in that messaging. And to the point where they've said, if you don't have time to come and contribute to this, then tell us and we'll backfill your role to get you.
Wow, we'll make time for you.
They've said, we'll put our money where our mouth is and we will make time for you to contribute. And one of the leaders has been out around the sites and saying, if this program succeeds, it will be because of you guys. And if it fails, it will be because of you guys. So, because he knows the cynicism's there, so he's saying, complain all you want, but come tell us what we need to change because we need it. I think you've mentioned it in your podcast a few times. The people who do the work are the best placed to tell you where to improve it and what to let go, rather than someone in head office saying this is how it should be done. Right. Because actually in reality, it's a bit different.
Is that how they would have done it historically?
Yeah. Yes, I think so.
So what do leaders feel about this change? I mean, does it freak them out that
no,
actually these empowered workers that are speaking the truth?
No, they are really supportive, really positive. It's just kind of the way we work now. And I think by focusing on management's reaction and management support, that was absolutely the best thing to work on first, because it's put us in a position where the managers have been really open, leaders have been so open to people. And so you asked how we verify, they're going out and talking to people more. And it's interesting because all you heard was all this, this procedure's crap and this doesn't work and that's so complicated. And now what we're getting is, what we did was we started with the worst one.
Right,
which is good, right? The worst, because we knew the one we needed to work on and simplify, because everybody complained about it. Whenever Megan and I went out to site, all you get is in your ear. And it was 60 plus documents. We went down to one document, 15 pages with a flow chart at the start.
Wow, that's crazy.
And that was the principle that the guys agreed on, was right, that we need to have 15 pages max. If it's any more, there needs to be a really good reason. There needs to be one document. Don't replicate the regulations that the government have created, actually, because it's there. They've got a website with all that stuff on. Don't rewrite it. Reference it if you need to, but have a flow chart. That flow chart's the work process, because the guys who have done this 20 bazillion times, they don't need to read through 15 pages of detail. All they need is that flow chart to just prompt them on the steps. And if there's an issue with a particular step, then they can go and reference the detail. And they were really good principles, and that's what we started with first. So I had a really good conversation when I was at site recently with somebody who said that they'd been having a chat with one of my HSE people, and they said they were having a chat with one of the sharp-end workers who admitted he'd been very cynical when Megan and I came into health and safety, neither of us came from a health and safety background. Right. Saying, these two new girls in health and safety, what are they going to do? And which is kind of what I said on my last podcast. I'm sure people are going, what the hell? And they said, man, we're seeing change. And it kind of validated everything that we've been doing. It was really nice to have a sharp-end worker go, my cynicism's kind of gone out the door a little bit. These people are actually making some change happen. And it's not just us, it's a whole bunch of people, but that was nice. So, we started with the worst one, and now I've heard recently on another one that people have been complaining, actually it's not that bad. It actually just needs tweaking here and here. So people are being a bit less
reactive almost.
Or more strategic in their thinking.
They're just... so it's...
And the ability to look at a process and keep what's good and fix what's bad is empowering to the workers. I mean, that's really great. And it's better for you guys. So what's next?
Less work for us too, which is nice.
let's work on all four.
The second thing we've talked about, our response to leadership, but learning teams have been really...
I think learning teams help with the empowerment piece, because Megan said that was the second area. And learning teams put the power back in the hand of the sharp end. So the HSE guys said to me, man, we used to go around and do these formal investigations, and it was like a police investigation, one-on-one. Let's get the real story. We'll do them one-on-one, so they all, all the stories line up. And they would come up with the actions, and then they'd pass the actions on to the sharp-end worker who had to do it, who'd kind of roll their eyes and go, pfft. So now with the learning teams, I think people feel more empowered because they're contributing to the discussion and they're coming up with the actions.
Yeah.
To the point where, at the support of our senior leaders in operations, there's almost no formal investigations happening anymore.
It's amazing, but not surprising. I mean, because probably what you're doing, and you can tell me if you're wrong, but probably, or if I'm wrong, probably what you're doing is you're identifying things way earlier, and so it needs less formal introduction. It needs less formal investigation because it's early.
Well, it's less about blame.
Yeah,
it's more about a realization that there are some individual actions that need to be dealt with from time to time, but most of the stuff is the system.
Has it impacted accountability?
Where we're at now is people think and this is, you talked about it the other day, growing pains versus growing failures. So we're going through a growing pain at the moment of such a lot of good stuff's been happening, but now people are starting to worry that, we're just being kind of nice all the time, and if we're nice all the time, then accountability goes out the window.
Right.
And actually, if somebody's actions have been reckless, we're not dealing with it. But actually, if someone's actions have been reckless, we totally should be dealing with it.
Yeah. But have you had many reckless actions?
No.
I mean, that's the thing that cracks me up kind of.
Yeah.
They're so worried that people are running with scissors and
Most
almost no one's running with scissors.
Most of it is mistakes or just a lapse. So why do we have the lapse? Or the system just confused people, and there's been not many where you've had reckless behaviour. So now we're shoring our leaders up around that to say, I think there's a worry that, on this journey to generative, it's just chaos. And when it's chaos, it's complex.
But that's kind of the lack of control, right? As they give up control and they feel like it's chaos.
It feels chaotic and it feels grey and ambiguous, and how the heck do you deal with that? Is it unstructured? And if you let that feeling wash over people, it's very easy for them to go back to the old ways of working, which we don't want. Nobody wants that. So,
well, do you think you'll go back?
No. Not if we've got anything to do with it.
I'm not even sure you can. It'd be really.
How would you
go back?
Yeah, how would you?
I don't think. I think it's just. But you know what? It's good that people are raising these questions and going, you know what? I feel worried. I feel worried that there's just chaos. So we can have a really good discussion about it.
A healthy sense of unease.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But it's now got momentum. So you talk about, will we go back? I don't think we will, because there is enough of a, groundswell of momentum. And last week was a classic where we would have touched, I don't know how many people, with the workshops that we've done with you. Right. That we've really continued to prick people's thinking on safety, and people have been really receptive to that. So I think there's enough now that we're really starting to. There's no way it'll go back.
It doesn't strike me as a far journey in New Zealand. It doesn't seem like you have a lot of irresponsible sociopathic workers. Mostly, you have really overly responsible, well-intended, super good workers.
Of course, we do. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, we are fortunate.
I'd like to think we don't have any.
We don't have many roads.
In our contact energy.
Well, that's true. Yeah,
our recruiting practices are pretty good. We tend to filter those ones out.
Yeah, you try to get rid of those before.
In fact, I'm not sure many of them would apply because we're well known for having high standards, including with our contractors.
Yeah, and that's fun to watch because it's clear to me that you're raising the bar for contractors. I mean, they're having to think differently in order to work for you, and they want to work for you. So that's interesting. So what's next? What do you think is ahead? I mean, one of the things you talk about is creative verification. I think creative verification is a really interesting topic. What are you thinking?
That's the puzzle that I'm wanting to talk with you more about over the next week, Todd, is it can't all be formal audits.
Right. In fact, it shouldn't be.
That's one aspect of verification, and it is a really meaningful, because it's a deep dive on a lot of stuff that gives you some really rich information. But if you are the assurance team aren't big, so if you're only finding out once a year through a formal audit that stuff's not right, that's not good.
Yeah.
So how do you do the creative stuff informally right through the year? And that's the bit that we're looking at. And I think the key thing is having really clear standards.
Right.
Because I think where we've fallen down a little bit in the past is we've not been really clear on our standards.
Right.
What do we expect? And how do we know whether you're meeting that expectation or not? And so it's about having conversations with people.
And really, acceptance is kind of your standard. Whatever you accept is your standard. So it's really raising the acceptance bar so that people are thoughtful about the way they do work.
And so part of that is actually having good safety conversations to go, hey, I've just noticed a standard which you've either exceeded, and that's fabulous, let's talk about that, or one that was actually a bit below par, let's have a conversation. How did that come about? So that's been happening for a couple of years, but I think we need to build on it more and connect it to leaders to go, that's a really informal way of being clear about what the expectations are, but it's a really powerful way.
Could you reframe your behavioral-based safety program so it was more of a verification program?
I think that's probably where we're at in our journey, because we've our behavioural-based safety's been about safety conversations and this and that, and it's been really good and people have got comfortable with it. But I think if we took it to verification, people would see more meaning in it.
And they would actually go and look at processes and conditions, and verify that what's supposed to be there is there.
Yeah.
And actually, one of our senior leaders talks about it a lot. Our head of operations, which I love, he talks about, instead of an opportunistic safety conversation, go and plan one and go, what bit of work am I going to go out and have a look at today? And just go out and have a chat with the people and actually purposefully go out and have a look, rather than kind of, oh, look, I've come across this, which I think is right. The other bit is, blind obedience versus open debate. I love having debates with the sharp end guys about what's crap, what's really good, and them challenging me on our standards and going, why do we have this? What's the purpose? And sometimes they've raised some really good issues about where it's not quite right. And
what's the process for them to have differing opinions like that? I mean, how do they do it?
Well, it's leaders getting out to site and engaging with them.
They create an environment where that can happen.
Yeah.
Is there a structure you can put around that?
I don't know. Is there?
I don't know. We'll talk more. It's good to know.
We'll buy it off you if there is.
I don't have everything to sell. That's
No, it would be because it can't be unstructured. You're not going to have operational excellence with no structure at all.
You have to have structure.
You've just got to have a balance.
And structure drives both worker behavior and leader behavior. I mean, the structure around how leaders behave, the accountabilities that leaders have create that leader behavior. And that's really our challenge, is creating systems that drive leaders towards this very forward-thinking behavior and allow leaders to do their job, make hard decisions, manage resources, all that stuff they do.
And it has to be coupled with authenticity and transparency.
Yeah, secret weapon.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely.
Because, then you've got your two-way trust happening. You've got,
You talked about that this week, Todd. Yeah, in a complex environment, transparency is key.
Yeah, it's the answer, right?
And that's what's happened in the last year, and it's made an impact. Definitely. We need to share more learnings now. We're not sharing across our sites on good stuff. And I think it's because there's still a little bit of people feeling like if they've made if something's happened, it's a bit of a failure on their part.
So they're embarrassed.
A little bit, I think.
And they're awfully humble.
They're very humble. And, it's a bit of a Kiwi thing. I stuffed up. You mentioned it this week. Our first thing in New Zealand is to go, if there's a mistake or something happens, we go, oh, it's my fault, I stuffed up, and we kind of don't want to talk about it.
The peppermill problem.
The peppermill story.
Yes.
But I think that's changing. I think that is changing. But if we can share more stories, it will be hugely impactful.
So from you two guys, what piece of advice would you give anybody else that's on this journey? You're pretty far. You're 18 months. You're even farther than that.
From my perspective, it's not big bang. It is try something. And if you're trying something small, it's a safe environment. It's, if it doesn't work, you haven't lost a whole heap, but try those small experiments. And I mean, we've just talked for the last, I don't know how many minutes, about two things really that have made quite a big impact. Only two things. We haven't had a big project team around it. We haven't had, a big CapEx budget around it. It's just, actually, here's 2 small things that we're going to do differently. And they have an impact. So butterfly wings, that small ripple effect that then goes out.
Small ripples create big waves. And it requires courage.
Bravery.
So if you feel uncomfortable, then you're on the right path. Because if you feel uncomfortable and then decide not to have a conversation with a sharp-end worker or have a conversation with another leader, then you're going back to comfort space and you're going back to your old norms and you're not going to get change.
So what makes you so brave?
I don't know.
It's a good question.
It is a good question.
Gosh.
I think I probably have... I personally, my values... We've just done a values exercise at our leadership team, actually, and one of my strongest values is I will... even at personal risk, but not great personal risk, I will pursue a vision. So if you've got a vision and you really believe it, then get people around you who support you and believe it too and actually take the risk. Because it's the same thing that Megan just talked about. A small experiment is me going and having a conversation with somebody, and actually if it doesn't go well, then I'll feel a bit bad, but it's not the end of the world.
Right.
Because we respect each other as leaders in this business, so it's not irrecoverable.
Nice.
But the other bit, I think, is how do you get the sharp end to do some small experiments? You mentioned it before. You can ask leaders to lead differently, which is a really, I'll lead differently. What does that mean I do?
Yeah, exactly. Help me.
So our path next, I think, is getting our leaders to support our sharp end workers doing... We've been doing small experiments. How do we now get our sharp end to do some small experiments? Rather than... blank sheet of paper, let's stop everything we were doing and start something new, because you can totally see the energy sucking straight out of them as soon as you say blank sheet of paper. They're like, oh no, here comes another big bang.
Crap.
No.
They're changing it all again.
And there you have it. What do you think? Wasn't that a sweet little conversation? Just 30 minutes, a couple of friends hanging out, talking. Megan's so amazing. Tania was great. It was a good conversation. I think what matters most is the confidence that Contact feels in the change as they've moved towards this new view, towards safety differently. They've noticed things happening, and the things that are happening are good. And in this kind of world, complex, market-driven, energy creation, energy distribution, you're not going to have fixed metrics. They don't even have fixed metrics with their product. Their product moves as demand calls for it. The price changes as demand calls for it. It's kind of true with safety as well. It's a complex system, and because it's a complex system, they have to measure it by understanding the vector their reliability is moving. And that conversation about that is money in the bank. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. It was super fun to make it. It was more fun to even be there. So thanks to everyone who was a part of this podcast, and thanks for the invitation. And thanks to the senior leaders at Contact for being brave and staying the course and being open to learning new and different ways to think about managing problems. That means a lot. I hope the same for your company as well. Thank you for being in the podcast. We're going to have some fun. Just hold on. There's lots of great people coming up and lots more exciting conversations to be had. Until then, have some fun every day. Learn something new. And for goodness sakes, be safe.